Do you have a special affinity to the safety of anthropomorphic creatures? Do you like digging holes and bashing walls? Well, then you are in luck. Lemmings, one of the most iconic games of all times. Endeavor to lead your little buddies to victory, braving a cacophony of obstacles from tall walls, long falls, and obstacles, to some more extreme things like fire, blenders, and an actual fire-shooting robot face? With your trusty mouths and your lemming enhancements, you can lead your little buddies all the way to safety, all for the simple joy of really just doing it. So sit back, fire up that DOS emulator, and get ready to click and laugh with Lemmings.
Retro Recall.
Welcome back to Retro Recall, the show with more nostalgia than the number of lemmings I accidentally sent to their untimely deaths this week.
Yeah, that'll happen, Tom. All right, so last week we did the granddaddy of first-person shooters, Doom, an action-packed game pushing the limits of gaming at the time, along with actually some societal drama. And so we're following that up with Lemmings.
Lemmings!
Kind of a pivot, but this is a game that actually I love more than Doom.
Wait, what? Wait. You love this more than Doom?
Yeah. Lemmings has consumed a lot of my life, just joyously. For joyous, mindless, just that's what I describe it as just, that was satisfying.
So wait, the guy who loves like heavy metal, punk, hardcore,
Lemmings
is like,
love me some Lemmings.
Doom's fine, but Lemmings, the cute game, with the funny little guys with the floppy hair. That
I love just the guy who just digs with an axe and an angle, getting that angle just right. The Lemmings fall. The little parachute guy with the umbrella. Oh, we're going to have fun today. All right. Yeah. But today we're going to dive into the history of the game, including what a Commodore 64 was. Good luck, everybody. The amazing growth of this game and really its legacy, which is a lot larger than I think a lot of people realize. But
this is foundational. Yeah, and we're going to get into that.
It is. Talking to friends of mine, I told them, like, we were talking about Lemmings, and they were like, yeah, Lemmings. I'm like, do you realize how foundational it was? And then you start talking through it, they're like, oh, wow, I had no idea. But when you say it, it is. It is like this origin point for a lot of gaming. But we'll get into it.
It's one of those Thanos games. It was inevitable. Yeah. that joke would have worked like 10 years ago, really, really well.
Is that how long that movie came out?
It's been a while.
It really is.
I don't know, 8 years. I mean, it's been a while. Anyway, all right, let's get into it. When did this game come out?
So this game was released on the 14th of February in 1991. It's a Valentine's Day release because Lemmings are also romantic.
I guess so.
It was released on the Amiga platform, which you may be wondering what that is. I'll get to it later. Just know console wars were a thing, and they stretch back a long time.
And PC style gaming PC
was
wars
a big deal back then.
Yeah.
So February 14th, 1991, number one song in America was Everybody Dance Now by CNC Music Factory. So finally a song I know. I mean, it's only because I go to sporting events. It's the only reason I know what this song is, but I'm really happy I've actually heard of this.
Man, they played this on the radio all the time. I was like 12 years old. And Everybody Dance Now.
Yeah, this was...
It's like... But I mean, stuck in your head.
But it at least lasted. Usually when we cover this, it's like, and here's the song, and you and I both look at each other like...
like, I don't know.
I don't know that song's been played in a while. Like this one was played. I mean, the Super Bowl was last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. It probably got played there. Like that's how.
Yeah, somebody should do a documentary about music in sports arenas and how that's super weird. How certain songs
just last forever. Yeah,
because of sports. Yeah. I don't know. That's a whole thing.
Yeah. And I will say, 1991 was for me and my music a super transformative year as far as stuff, because you got Metallica, Sepultura, Nirvana, Pennywise, NoFX, but it actually all releases later in the year because this is still February. It's not a great time. Tom was a musician; he knows it wasn't a great time to release music. Just candidly in February.
Well, this was there was a big shift about to happen in music.
But what I'm saying is February is a bad time to release music just because touring is not ideal. Right. Yeah. But
it's winter and
it was, the funny thing is February is actually usually a time where you dump movies because it's all the films you don't think are going to be hits. So usually February's terrible. And it starts off kind of that way. We look at what's in the box office. King Ralph. It's funny. It's not good. But it's funny. Never-Ending Story 2. Depressing and not good. The LA Story, which is just weird. Also, Sleeping with the Enemy, which turns out was a massive hit, and I have no idea why. But There was.
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen any of these films.
Sleeping with the Enemy.
I think I remember a little bit about each. I don't think I did.
King Ralph is the one where the entire royal family dies and some guy from like Cleveland is the next in line.
Yeah.
I've seen it once. It's stuck in.
I can picture like the cover of the box in my head.
And Neverending Story 2 was equally bad to Neverending Story 1.
Yeah, I remember the first one.
Yeah. But I was actually, obviously I'm foreshadowing something because I still can't believe this was a Valentine's Day release. Valentine's Day, 1991. Silence of the Lambs.
Well, when you take out your date on Valentine's Day, it's always important to grab a good meal.
I mean, I don't think you guys can conceive of how much I've seen this movie and how much I quote this movie. Mostly Buffalo Bill, if I'm being honest. I'm not quoting good parts of this film, but I quote Buffalo Bill with my friends more times than I should. Oh, yeah, that movie's fantastic. But anyway, Lemmings. So,
Lemmings.
What is Lemmings? Lemmings is this.
What is Lemmings? What is Lemmings?
Lemmings is
tell me.
Maybe
put it in a box.
I think it's one of the most eclectic games that has spanned the test of time. It's this one because I don't think of Tetris as eclectic. I think Tetris is just a straight puzzle. Lemmings is genuinely a weird game. Like Pac-Man, when you think about it, is a weird game. Super Mario, when you think about it, is a weird game. When you look at Lemmings, you go, "This is a weird game." And I'm going to go play it now for 4 or 5 straight hours. That's Lemmings. Because it's fun. It's not in an easy to explain sense because it is, if you explain something, it's dumb and lame. But everyone I told when I was doing this show, hey, I'm playing Lemmings. They've all gone, oh, I love that game. Just universally, oh, I love that game. Mm-hmm. I had one person say, oh, that game sucked. Not one. And I talked to a good number of people. So what is... Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
So here, one of the things that we were talking about in the pre-show was it dawned on me this week that this and a number of other games are what I would call inevitable games, right? Like this idea that this is one of those things when you ask somebody about science, like, how do you know science is true? And it's like, well, if you were to get rid of all the knowledge in the world and you kicked us back to the Stone Age and then human beings developed again and rediscovered everything, then they would rediscover the same scientific principles that we already know.
Right.
Because those things are just true. They get revealed with evidence and we would just rediscover, oh, gravity works like this, that kind of thing. If you were to get rid of video game technology and you kick us back to the Stone Age and human beings invent computers and video games again and have no concept of previous games that were made, this is one of the games that people would make again. Now, the graphics might be different. The individual mechanics might be slightly shifted. But this concept of you have these little dudes who show up, they walk around and you got to get them to an exit and you can give them little jobs in order to get to the exit is so simple, but yet has so much potential all at the same time. It's up there with the concept of like a platformer, like Mario would have been reinvented maybe with a different skin, or Doom would have been reinvented with maybe a different skin.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
We were always going to get a first-person shooter. You were always going to get some sort of puzzle like a Tetris, and you always get this like maybe. I would argue maybe not Mario, but if we look at Mario, Castlevania, Zelda, if you put those that chunk together, exactly,
right,
yeah, and then you're going to get Lemmings because it's just this weird eclectic thing that's just going to appeal to people for no apparent reason, but it does.
And my point is that the concept is fundamental. Things show up in one place. You have to move them from one place to another. Yeah. They naturally just move.
Yep.
And you give them jobs to then make sure that you can get as many of them as possible from one place to the next place. That is such a simple concept. And it's like so many other things. Being simple and yet having so much potential is genius. Yeah. There's something that's just brilliant about that.
It is. And so Lemmings itself is kind of a hilarious game when you look at it objectively, because it's just a bunch of anthropomorphic creatures. They have nothing to do with actual lemmings. In fact, the idea that lemmings follow each other off a cliff is no more true than any other animal following other animals off a cliff. Animals will stampede.
The whole concept
is it's all fake.
It was made up. It was like a Disney documentary in the 1960s, and they had to make it more interesting, and so they basically created a scenario where they scared a bunch of lemmings off a cliff and filmed it. And then they just made it up. And then everyone since then was like, lemmings run to their death.
Disney has a dark history.
There's some dark stuff there.
My kid loves it,
but
so we're in. But like,
these lemmings are like walking on two legs, and they've got little heads and little hands, and they're not anything
and
like.
All you do in Lemmings is, to Tom's point, they come out on one side of the map, and you get them to the other side of the map, and there are obstacles in the way, and you have to dig, bash, block, use an umbrella, blow up. And we'll get more into it later. But the goal is to get as many of them.
Build the stairs.
Yeah,
I love the little stair
guys. Over the tick, tick. I know the sound. Yep. You want to get them to the other side, as many as possible. Now, this game is interesting to me too, because it comes from DMA Designs, who most of you are probably aware of, but don't realize it, because they're currently called Rockstar Games, the masters of releasing games quickly.
Quickly releasing it. Yeah. So I looked into this some more, and this is actually really, really interesting, because DMA becomes Rockstar North. And if you know the history of Rockstar Games, there are different studios that are all under that umbrella. This was the studio that some of these guys went on and created the foundations for the first 2 GTA games.
Yeah.
Not GTA 3, not when the series really exploded into third person with 3D environments and that kind of thing. The first 2 were top-down games. 2 was a top-down game.
It? Oh, wow.
Yeah, the first 2 were like that. You look down at the map, you're this little guy running around, you get in the car. I have very strong memories of playing both.
Wow.
And the engine did not work like this polygonal 3D environment like you got with GTA 3. And all of the core guys who worked on this worked on other games in that studio, but did not work on GTA 3 or the games beyond that. Eventually, they left for other projects, and the studio went on to other people. So we could go through the whole list of names. That part's not super interesting. There's a documentary that came out yesterday on YouTube as I was just thumbing through things, and it was giving me like, you've been looking at Lemmings stuff. Here, you should check out this documentary that came out. It's an hour and a half.
On DMA Designs,
Yeah, with Russell Kay, who was the lead programmer, and David Jones, who was the founder, and like all of this stuff. But yeah, so those guys, if it wasn't for Lemmings, we would not have Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, or a lot of other stuff too. I mean, we're going to get into all the stuff Lemmings gave us later. But so these developers, it's the late 80s, early 90s. And the studio's all over the map on their designs. They're really driven more, and I love this era, by what they're able to create than really a game design. This is, more in the modern era, we kind of expect certain games out of certain studios, which is fine. It's probably a better thing. But this was an era where studios would make a side scroller, then they'd make an action game, they'd make a puzzle game. Yeah. They were all over the place. And the reason this worked was because you had a lot more limitations on space. Storage was very expensive in this era. So you were kind of constantly playing with different code to make things work. And a lot of times you just stumble into something, which is literally what happened with Lemmings. They were making a side scroll game, and a NPC-esque character, it wasn't even NPC, it's like an enemy character, was able to look like it was walking on the screen. And another...
which sounds so simple today, but it's not. Yeah. And so I looked into this a little bit too. Turns out that game, remember the big giant mech from what was the cop, RoboCop?
Yeah.
Remember the big mech thing with the arms and the guns?
Ed 209? Do I remember it?
Yeah.
I don't just remember it. Ed 209 is burned into my brain, Tom.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. That guy and the AT-AT or AT-AT walkers from Star Wars inspired a game where you commanded a big mech, and you had to. It was massive. It was like a 3-story tall thing, and you had to shoot all these little soldiers, and they come out with their vehicles, and they paradrop guys and stuff like that. And the game had parallaxing, so the area that the mech would walk in would move at a different rate than the things in the foreground or the things in the background. Okay. And so they had to figure out how to set up these little soldiers to look like they were walking correctly in that parallaxed video. Not just the video, but like the actual gameplay. Which is what connects to the animation for Lemmings. And they were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah, they were doing stuff. They were doing games that looked like Gladius or Life Force, the Konami games where you were flying a ship and you got power-ups, and you had to. It was like a little shmup game type setup. They were doing a variety of these different types of things, and they pulled the technology from all of those games and they put them into Lemmings, and it turned into, hey, we can make this crazy thing that's nothing like anything else we've made.
That's wild.
And then you get these cute little characters. Yeah. Yeah, so they dabbled in all sorts of other games, and everything else they were doing is way edgier than these cute little guys just walking around in a map trying to figure out how to get to the exit.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see it in some of the game, like the stage designs.
Right.
Like the stages where you basically go to hell.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
have
yeah.
you thought about that?
No, because I was enjoying just the way the level designs kind of were just wild and all over the place. But now that your point, you're like,
I didn't think about it much as a kid. I was like, oh, this one's cool. There's like fire and stuff, or this one's cool.
Yeah.
You're in a cave, or this one's cool. And it's like, there's, like a spider web. But no, some of those like background, like there's a 666 level where you have to get through the 666 to get
I did
out of
notice.
hell.
I did notice some of that. That was just I just assumed it was metal. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, that's me. I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Right. But these guys were creating mechs to blow stuff up. They were eventually making Grand Theft Auto where you stole vehicles and shot the cops.
Yeah.
But then they have this little game in between.
Oh God.
Kind of hilarious.
Yeah. This game is amazing to me in that regard, because what these guys figured out was, first they made a basic mechanic, which was that they made a moving lemming, and then they were able to give the lemming abilities. And so these abilities could be stuff like, bash a hole, blow up, do all this stuff. But what I like a lot is the level, they did all this stuff, and it allowed them to do this goofy thing, which was make almost unlimited level design. And what they did, which is hilarious to me, is they used something called Deluxe Paint, which is not that far off from MS Paint. Deluxe Paint, those of us who are old enough remember Deluxe Paint. If you don't remember it, Deluxe Paint had a picture of, I think it was the Sphinx or it was a pharaoh on front of it.
Yes.
Half of it was fully rendered,
God.
half it wasn't rendered. I mean, I went and looked this thing up.
Oh, yeah.
To go back to this.
It was like one of it was like wireframed and the other part looked more photorealistic.
This is
yes.
in some ways it's not the origin of CAD, but it's kind of the introduction of some of these CAD type programs to a lot of us.
Like vector art stuff.
Exactly. It was. I mean, it's vector painting. So what it allows you to do, though, is because of the way they wrote Lemmings, it allowed anyone and everyone within the studio to make levels for it. So as a result, when Lemmings was released, it had 120 levels. And all the developers were able to make their own levels with a ton of creativity and variety. I mean, not a ton of variety because there's still limitations, but to the point where the developers were just messing with each other. And they would actually do this cool thing where they would take a pen to paper and they would draw out a level and then they would fax it to each other. And then the person, when they would get the fax, they would draw on the fax to see if they could solve it. And this way they were able to play test the game on paper, and not have to code it out, which is an insane time saver. But the funny thing about that was I'm reading this, I'm going, wow, that's fascinating. And then I remember something. That's expensive. And so I went and looked it up. Yeah. A fax machine back then was $2,000 to $3,000. This is in the early 90s. So each page you printed due to toner was 10 to 20 cents. So them doing this actually was costing, it was still cheaper than the programming, but it wasn't like today where someone says, oh yeah, I drew something on a napkin and we planned it out. No, this was actually expensive. And it probably
it adds up pretty quick. Yeah.
But it was kind of funny. Just one of those, but if you think about what a dream for a programmer in an era where you've got limited electricity, kind of the power you can put into the PC, limited programming space, all that stuff, to be able to do a lot of programming, in effect, outside of programming, just on pen and paper. And so it actually became a competition between them. But also, the little last note of that, that's why when you play Lemmings, the levels are so different. It's because they're all made by different people.
Right. Yeah, so some of the stuff I learned when I was looking this up is that like one of the guys in the studio would do these really bare bones levels and they worked really well, but they only had the platforms you needed to work on.
Right.
So they had to tell him to go back and like decorate the edges of the map to make it feel like it's actually in a real space. The other thing that happened is they got so into designing intricate levels that became most of the later levels in the game that they realized they didn't have any easy ones. So they had to go back at the end before releasing the game and make that, you know how it's like, like the different stages are like fun and tricky and like they have these funny names. They had to go make all the easy ones in order to do the Nintendo thing of teach them how to use each of the abilities on levels that are easier to complete.
Because they already knew the game. So they were like, what?
Right.
Yeah. What's the problem? Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, so wait. But the next piece I want to kind of jump into there, though, was the Amiga system. So Lemmings was originally made for what was called the Amiga system. And this is because, much like Betamax, Amiga was well ahead of VHS. Amiga was the successor to the Commodore 64. I know a lot of you going, the what? So
these were like, think of these as like early PCs that had more of like a gaming slant and an easy accessibility kind of quality to them.
I'm going to explain it this way. So in 1990, operating system options were DR-DOS, Apple Mac OS, Amiga, IBM PC, kernel, Windows 3, MS-DOS. MS-DOS and Windows 3 were the largest. They were 50% share. Apple, by the way, was about a 6% share. That's 1990. By 1999, Microsoft was a 97% of the market, which is why they had to invest in Apple, cough, cough. Story for another day. But so at this era, it's obvious Microsoft is winning, but they haven't won yet. And the Amiga system, whose origins come from actual Atari, were the first ones who were built around graphics and sound. So they were trying to, Windows, and the reason Microsoft won, candidly, was because Microsoft focused on, hey, we believe personal computing is going to be necessary for business, which was correct. So they focused a lot more on that. Whereas,
and flexibility. Those systems were not as designed for graphics and for like controlling like a video game console, but they were more flexible in their ability to code things.
And so what you got with Amiga, they were trying to do the whole, we're just going to make something that we believe gamers will buy this. This was not the best decision, by the way. And they went hard into, in effect, gaming PC. I don't want to jump into all the specifics, but in fact, they almost had overclocking. They didn't quite have it, but it was close-ish. I mean, their hardware configurations were designed in a way to actually maximize the usage of what we would consider today pathetic video cards, but they were pretty impressive at the time. Much crisper graphics, and things just looked better. So,
but it was kind of like this middle ground, right? Like if you really wanted a gaming experience, you'd get an NES or a Sega system of some sort. Like you'd buy an actual console. If you wanted a PC to do PC things, then you'd probably get a DOS system or a Windows 3 home PC IBM compatible kind of system.
Exactly.
So like the Commodore and the Amiga kind of ended up in this middle ground where they were like okay at both, but they weren't super great at either. But I believe that one of the reasons why Lemmings works so well, and it got ported to all of these systems, is because it was originally designed for the Amiga, which means by the time it made its way over to the consoles or the IBM systems, it worked for both. Because it kind of started in the middle.
Exactly. And so what happens with Lemmings, though, is the key piece of this is because it releases for the Amiga system, there's a couple million Amiga systems out there. Lemmings has more of a captive audience, for lack of a better phrase. I mean,
right. There's less competition.
There's some stuff. There's some companies that are very successful to this day because they were the first ones to be on like the iPhone back in the day, and they got an early jump because they happened to hit a market that was thirsting for apps. So, ta-da, you guys get there. So Lemmings sells over 50,000 copies at launch. That's a sale ratio that most games at that era would never sell that many in their lifespan. And or even if they did sell that many in their lifespan, were a success at 50,000 copies in their lifespan.
They had a little studio. It had like, 6-8 people in it for most of the year and a half they spent working on the game.
Yeah.
So that gets your money back real quick and turns into a lot of profit.
And Lemmings continues to explode from there. I mean, we don't have true numbers on this stuff, guys, but the studio has claimed they sold over 20 million copies in the 90s. Alone. So in less than 10 years, this game is everywhere.
And that's once it was out on all
now it's on
systems.
DOS, Apple, IBM, etc. Which doesn't...
One of the things I learned about when they had to port these over is how many times they had to redesign the graphics. Because in today's world, you design something in, say, Unreal Engine, and then it makes a version that works best for an Xbox and best for PC for different graphic settings and best for PlayStation, right? Like it already has those components in it, and you do the highest quality thing, and then it downgrades it for anything else you need, right? Back then, that wasn't the case. If you had a IBM PC with a CGA monitor, they needed to redesign the graphics completely for just 4 colors on your screen. And then they had to do another one for EGA with 16 colors, another one for VGA with 256 or more colors. And then on top of that, every IBM system had a different amount of RAM because they were customizable.
Yeah.
So they had to guess at like, okay, this is going to hit enough people who can buy it without hobbling the system and making it not work the way it's supposed to. There was a lot that went behind it, but it was totally worth it because the game was such a success.
And now this success of Lemmings blows up in a weird other way. And the other way is real-time strategy games, RTSs, my favorite style of game. Blizzard Entertainment, the early developers, openly say Lemmings was one of their main inspirations for how Warcraft worked in the beginning. The idea of clicking a unit and just giving it a task and sending it off to do that task, that didn't exist before this. This was it.
Yeah.
This is your origin point. This is the foundation of it's not just, I mean, I would say it's RTS games, but it's beyond RTS games. NPCs. This is what it is. This is the whole concept of this thing is given a task and it goes and does that task. And it can be,
you know what else is kind of mind-blowing about that is that you're not just controlling one unit or just a few units.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have 50 little lemmings walking around on the screen and theoretically give them all different jobs.
Yeah.
And now they're all actively doing things on the screen at the same time. That was amazing for what computers and consoles were capable of. And on top of it, it was mouse oriented.
Yeah.
Lemmings is a game you play with a mouse, or when they ported it over, say, the Super Nintendo, you still had to move the cursor around with your D-pad.
Yeah,
because there was no easy way to engage with it outside of it.
I
went back and tried it on the Super Nintendo, and it turns out that it actually works relatively well.
I'll be honest.
Weird.
I do not believe you should ever play PC games on console. I just think
But it worked. Like the way they ported it over. Yeah, usually it sucks, but it turns out that it actually worked pretty well. It's they did a great job is my point. Yeah. Like working off of this middle ground they started with the Amiga and then working it into all these other systems, which goes to show why they would sell 20 million copies.
I mean, Lemmings is a huge hit. But now let's get back to our actual experience. That's the history of Lemmings. So we know it's a big hit, but it's a big hit in the 90s, which depressingly are almost 30 years ago right now. In fact, the game is over 30 years old at this point, and that hurts a little bit if I'm being honest.
35 years.
Yeah, that doesn't feel lovely. So we went back and played it. I played just the original on an emulator.
So you had actually, before we even did this episode, had been
I'd already been playing it. So I'll admit, I love them. I love Lemmings. When we started talking about doing this show, Tom and I figured out some emulators we were going to use, and I'm going through the emulators and I saw Lemmings was an option for a game, and I went, yep. And I downloaded it
just immediately.
Yep.
Not Doom.
Not we had games on a list for us to play so we could record shows. And I went, I have some extra time. And I filled the extra time with Lemmings. I love Lemmings. And it has been fantastic. I loved it. My wife walked in, what are you playing? I said, Lemmings. She goes, oh, I liked Lemmings. She played some Lemmings. I have passed Lemmings on. Lemmings is something you can pass around. Everyone loves Lemmings. It is just an overall fun game. And it's funny. Lemmings to me, though, is a weird one because it has a very early memory for me. 1994. I know this because of all the dates involved with this. I didn't play Lemmings at release. I know exactly when I played it. Christmas of 1994, I got for Christmas that year a CD player, Lemmings, and the album Smash by Offspring. There was other stuff, but whatever. And I vividly remember sitting at a computer with the headphones in, those horrible, like hard plastic headphones with the rough foam things.
Like the Walkman headphones?
That's what it was, the Walkman headphones. Playing Lemmings, listening to that album, which, by the way, still holds the record for most successful independent release of all time at 11 million copies. Like, people don't know that. It smashed to that. But hours playing. It's one of my early memories of gaming, and it just gives me great joy. But that's great. That's Lemmings. That's great. Lemmings is awesome to me because of that, but it is still that good.
I don't have a specific memory. So, like, oftentimes when we talk about these games, I can tell you, like, I got Super Mario World when I got my Super Nintendo for Christmas that year after it came out. And my brother and I spent all day playing it, and we beat it the first day because we just sat in front of the TV until we beat it that night or whatever. Like, I can tell you those stories. I don't remember specifically when I played Lemmings or what platform I first played it on. I know that I knew about it. I'm pretty sure at some point I played it on PC.
Yeah.
Because I was a PC guy who also had like a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think, but I don't remember buying it or being gifted it. Maybe I had a friend, or maybe I played it at a friend's house, or maybe he gave me a copy of the game and then I just loaded it up on my own PC. That's probably what happened. But I also know that I played the Super Nintendo version as well. So maybe I ended up renting it later. But I did look into this a little bit. I never played Lemmings 2.
Yeah, I've played Lemmings, Lemmings 2. I've played a bunch. I lost track of all the sequels. I've played a lot of Lemmings, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. And I remember at least sitting at a PC and playing it. I remember like something about the pixel art was so good. The way the little hair flops when they walk around. They're only 10 pixels tall.
Oh yeah.
But like they're so expressive. And that was one of the other things they talked about on this interview I listened to, is this idea that they were trying to make a walking character as small as possible, but also maintain expressive-ness, and how they would sketch out the characters on pieces of paper and then try to translate that over to pixel art. And they took a few iterations for especially some of the animations that they do, but like they nailed it.
Yeah.
Like these little 10 pixel dudes are super expressive.
Well, actually, let's get into that. Let's talk about the parts of the game, going back and playing it, that really are great. I mean, good. We usually go with good, but I mean, this game really stands out.
Yeah.
And I want to go into it. And so, first one to me is, it's weird. It's really weird. And I mean, I know as a person, I'm a little bit weird too. Like some of the stuff.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, some of the stuff I'm into, it can be a little eclectic, and by a little, I mean a lot. But whatever. I found this game super enjoyable because of that. I mean, the Lemmings are funny. They just walk forward and they walk into a wall and they turn back the other way, or they walk.
They make those little sounds, the little sounds when they're working. Yeah.
Or they'll just walk off a cliff. They'll walk into a blender. They'll walk into fire and then just get burned to a crisp.
Right. And when you get frustrated that you messed up and you want to start over, you hit
blow them all up,
make them all explode.
And they all
and their little pixels go everywhere.
Well, and they shake and put their hands above their head like the YMCA and explode, and and they explode into multiple colors because it's festive.
Yeah.
And
I don't know, it's just their guts.
Yeah, it's festive. They're festive Lemmings. And then you have these goofy tools to play with. You have one who punches through the walls. You have the one that blows themselves up.
So this is weird, right? He has a pickaxe when he's digging down diagonally.
Yeah.
And they have other tools for doing other things. But when it comes to burrowing through a wall just to the side, he punches it. He punches a big hole, and then he punches another hole. Why doesn't he have a tool?
He also has his pickaxe goes at 45 degrees, but if you want to go down, he digs with his hands. He punches with his hands.
That's true.
He'll also just stand there and put his hands out like a traffic guard. Those are great.
Yep. And then he shakes his head back and forth like,
no one comes this way. No one comes this way. Nope. It is, but my favorite is the umbrella. It's just the idea like, oh, this guy's going to fall. Oh, just give him an umbrella and then he won't fall as far. And it is.
And the animation, because they drops a certain amount and then the umbrella catches and then he goes whoop and floats.
Exactly. Because when the umbrella deploys, he actually goes up a little bit and then floats down. Exactly. It is very.
It's like a cartoon.
Oh, it's meant to be.
But it's so tiny.
This is hard to do, especially back then. And this looked amazing. So I love that stuff. Yeah. But then they also have this weird music over top of it too, which is like the soundtrack it's cute. You've got like London Bridge is falling down, the can, Dance of the Reed Flutes. You've also got just random like I think Beethoven's in there. It's this wild collection is it 8-bit sound, Tom? Is that what this would be?
It's probably still 8-bit sound. Yeah. But like to me, it's like, well, they didn't want to pay for any royalty for any songs, so they just
all open source.
Yep. Right. It's just like, okay, this stuff's fun. Kind of like Looney Tunes cartoons using classical
I was going to go late 80s, early 90s rap sampling where they were like, all right,
there you go.
I would like to not get sued. How can I do this? Well, here's a song no one's ever heard of from the early 70s. Cool. That's what I have now. Or you do what Vanilla Ice did and say, no, it's just got din. It's totally different.
It just changed. There's just a beat missing.
There's a beat missing.
There's a note. I took a note out.
It's not under pressure. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. It's inspired by
exactly. But even when you get beyond that, then you get to the levels. And I think Tom covered it really well earlier. We said, I didn't know that till you mentioned it, that they forgot to make the early easy levels, because it ramps on you out of nowhere where you're like, okay.
If you start at tricky, you're going to be like, okay, wait a minute. Let me think through this a little bit more, because you will not have worked up to the point where you go, okay, this is the fundamentals of everything I can do. This is where I want to use those things. And then by the time you get to the next tier of stuff, it's pretty obvious. It's like, oh, well, I got to burrow something. I'll use this.
It is hard. And it's not just hard, it's timing hard too. You have to really nail your timing. You have to be able to come in there and say, okay. And that's actually what's probably the more frustrating bit of it. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But this game does ramp up at 120 levels. I mean, I've played a lot of Lemmings. I don't think I've beaten it. I've probably level skipped. I've probably moved around a little bit. Yeah.
I didn't beat it this time when we went back and played it. I didn't finish everything. And I don't remember if I don't think I did.
I mean, there's no reward. But the problem with beating Lemmings is you may have beat Lemmings and you just don't really know, because it's not like we talked about this before. A lot of these early games, like F-Zero, which we covered, you beat F-Zero. You just beat F-Zero. It's like, you beat F-Zero. I don't even sure if F-Zero knows.
Congratulations. Yeah. And then it goes back to the title screen.
I don't even know if F-Zero knows you beat it. Like, and that's how Lemmings
What's cool about Lemmings is that it doesn't have a save system. It has a level code system.
Yeah.
So
it was common back then.
At the time, if you had like a Nintendo Power that had all the level codes in it, or today, you just look them up on the internet, you can try the other levels. You don't actually have to grind your way through levels that you maybe don't enjoy as much to go be like, okay, well, what's the hardest level? What does that look like? And then you just put the code in.
Yeah, by the way, you're in for a treat. Maybe you do that when you'd be like, oh God. Like, I will say, because that's the thing about having 120 levels. When it's the hardest level, it's not a joke hardest level. Like, oh, I could do this.
Right.
Nah, man. Like,
right. And they all march at their own rate. So it's going to take the same amount of time, even if you're real good at it. You still have to play through it. And if it takes you 15 minutes to beat that level, it's going to take you 15 minutes to beat the level.
But I think that's a good transition to some of the bad, though, because one of the bads of the game is it does get hard. Frustratingly hard.
Well, okay, so let's talk about this, because is it hard because the level design is difficult, or because the limitations of the interface make engaging with the game hard?
It's a combo of both, because if you gave me these same levels with what I would call a modern interface, they'd be easy. But if you were making this game in the modern era, you'd make them more complicated because of the modern interface.
That's true.
It's designed in a way because they knew when they were developing, yes, they were drawing on a piece of paper, but they knew when they were designing it that you had to click the mouse at the exact right time to time this out, or else the entire level was a waste. I'm talking about the more complex levels, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. Like, you have a certain little guy who has to explode at a certain spot in order to clear just a little bit of a hole for other people.
Or you have to drop a blocker with 3 guys in front of him. And and then those 3 guys, they all have to survive going back and forth building. You are on a knife's edge of timing. Everything is right there, because the later levels, you don't get 99, bridge builders or whatever it is. You get 10, and you need
enough as you need to
9.
beat the level. Yeah.
Like, it's that tight.
Yeah, it's
so
close.
The game is,
and on top of it, the interface, like the moving the mouse is on a little screen, less pixels, less accurate mouse movement, makes that harder, because or you're doing it with like a Super Nintendo controller, right? And then now it's even harder to be precise on which little guy. And on top of it, and these are some of the conveniences I would have added if this was something that you could have done back then. And maybe they thought about this, but they just didn't have the ability to do it. But you have to mouse back over the options at the bottom in order to choose, okay, I want to do the bricklayer guy. I want to do, okay, now I want to give this guy an umbrella and click him just before he falls, like that kind of stuff. Right. You have to go back and forth to click those things. Today, you would have put them all on like the number keys. It would have been like, 4 is the umbrella, 5's the bricklayer. And so you wouldn't be able to do that real quick. On top of that, you would have had speed controls. So you would have been able to hit the plus or minus key on your keyboard to either make it go at half speed, to pause it, to speed it up. Okay, I've cleared everything else out. And a lot of the levels end up, at least through the midsection of the game, they end up being solved by, okay, let's put 2 blockers down. Let's block most of the little guys between them. Let's send one little worker out to carve and build the path to the end. Yep. And then let's kill a blocker and everybody else walks to the end, right? And if you had like a 10x multiplier on that, that would make that a lot more convenient, but it doesn't exist. So those are the little things I would change. But really, I think the hardest limitation here is that this was an early mouse game. when mice were still ball mice. This is another one of those things that younger listeners will not remember. Everybody today has an optical mouse. It shines a light below it, and the sensor can tell when it moves over something, and it works on most surfaces.
Right.
But back then, you had a little ball, a little rubber ball, and it had to roll around underneath the mouse, which meant that it was very difficult to be super precise with it.
Oh, God. I
So
forgot
you
that
add all this stuff together,
stupid
and
ball.
yeah, remember the ball? You had to clean it, open it up and clean it out because it would get crap in it, and then it wouldn't roll right.
I hated that ball. I'm going to be honest.
So those are the limitations, but they're not limitations. So they're more of just situational to the way that the things were back then, you know. Those don't make the game any easier.
No, exactly. I'm just more in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about how incredibly hard that was. But yeah, so this era of gaming this is what made the game so popular. It was hard, but it wasn't impossible. It was just hard. Yeah. That being said, though, it's still a great game.
But that didn't mean it was bad.
Right. No. It wasn't. We thought when we come to Battletoads.
I don't want anyone to think.
Yeah. It's more this element of this is why I love Lemmings. The thing about Lemmings is original Lemmings 120 levels. You get into expansions, whatever. It's like 200 something levels. Just play the ones you want to play. If you want a heavy challenge,
well, that's the other thing.
You can go do it. If you don't want a heavy challenge, you can still go play like 60 levels of the game that are mediocre challenging. It's and that's what makes it so great. You're able to go in and just, have fun. So with that, let's jump into kind of our conclusion on the game. So was it fun, and who should go back and play it? Tom, I'll let you go first this time because I tend to.
Yeah. Well, clearly you're a super fan of Lemmings, so we know where you're at with it. Yeah, I think this is one of those games, and I bring this up a lot at the end of the show. This one is another one of those foundational games. If you have not gone and played Lemmings, go play it. You could play it in a browser. I remember how I played Doom in a browser last week. Right. I looked Lemmings up. Turns out that there's like a few different places you can play different versions of Lemmings in a browser. So it's as easy as that. Just look up Lemmings in a browser. You can go try it out right now. If you want to see a really good port, the Super Nintendo version of it works really well. Mm-hmm. The regular Nintendo version of it's pretty stripped down, but it still functions. Crazy how that works. That technology still worked out like that. So from like a history standpoint, absolutely. If you're a fan of puzzle games, absolutely. Go play it. It still holds up. If you're somebody who just doesn't have the patience to sit and look at an old game and just try to figure out how everything works, then maybe it's not for you. But I think for most people, it's still, it was so foundational and they got so much of it right back then that if you just kind of enjoy games, I think you'd still enjoy it, even if it's just for an hour.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think for me, it's a game that if you like puzzle games, obviously it's an automatic. I think it's up there with Tetris and Dr. Mario and those types of things. It's just a very, very good game, and you should go back and play it. But I also think people who play RTSs should just give it a quick shot and be like, oh, it's more go back to it with that mindset of like, oh, this is where RTS comes from. It's kind of a fun little thing. But mostly if you're an engineer, that's what I'll tell you right now. If you have an engineering brain, go play some Lemmings, because it very much so rewards that mentality of like, okay, precision, I make a plan, I follow through on a plan, diagnosing a problem and solving it. It's fantastic at that. So
also artists, if you're into pixel art.
That's true. Yeah.
Is great. The way that they we talked about the fire levels in Hell, the way that they have gradients on the objects floating above the lava that make it look like it's reflecting the light from the lava underneath them. And like we talked about with the animations for these little lemming guys, this is a masterclass of using very limited resources in a very effective way that still holds up because it's got such a strong aesthetic. Yeah. Like the design around it is so strong that it makes the limitations not really a problem.
No, I wouldn't even thought about that, but you're 100% correct. Yeah, it is. That's a massive piece of this. It's on me.
So I would add that. So if you're into that stuff, go check it out. And again, you can pull it up on a browser or watch a video and just kind of see what it's like if you want to just, dip your feet in a little bit. But that's it for Lemmings this week. This has been a lot of fun. What are we talking about? Oh, before we reveal what we're talking about next time, if you're into us, if you like us talking about stuff, then check out our other shows. John does the 40K Lorecast in the history of 40K. and I do the Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and Lord of the Rings lorecasts. And so we're lore guys, and we love talking about those worlds and those games. So go check that stuff out. If you're listening to this on any audio platform, you can easily look up those shows on the same platform and just kind of bookmark them and go listen to them again later. But John, what are we talking about next week?
So next week, we're going to go back to our tradition of only playing sequels, and we're going into Zelda 2, The Adventure of
Maybe
Link.
we should have done Lemmings 2.
It's fun every now and then.
I know.
To defend us, the problem is a lot of the originals weren't that good. If we're just being honest.
They're like super classics, like the first Zelda or the first Mario. And it's just like, well, of course they're amazing.
They are,
but maybe we'll go back and do
I think
those.
Zelda 2 is better than the original. I think the original.
The
original blows your
a
mind.
hot take.
Well, the original blows your mind because you never saw it before, but the sequel built off that. It's this. That's how.
But it turned it sideways. It's a side scroller, and it has more in common with Metroid. And a lot of Zelda fans will put it either at the bottom or very close to their bottom of their list of Zelda games. Yeah. Oh, it is. It is a dark horse. Is that the right expression for this?
All right,
maybe.
I'll get yelled at. I guess I'll get yelled at on the internet for saying I like Zelda too. They'll teach me a lesson.
Yeah, this is going to be a hot take because a lot of Zelda fans are going to be like, yeah, that one's not my favorite. But it's got to. I'm like you. I remember feeling like this game was really hard.
Yeah.
But I remember beating it as a kid. I beat the first Zelda as a kid, and I remember feeling very accomplished because. We'll get into it next week. I've got thoughts. John's got thoughts about Zelda too. So if you've played the early Zelda games, I think you'll be down with this. So
all right,
that's coming up.
All right. So till next week, John, Tom, see you guys then.
Yeah, go run a lemming off a cliff.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Retro Recall.
Robots Radio. Games. Lore. Stories. Community. Just press play.